Starting off the spring B side of the turn, or of the season, the B turn of the season. Yeah, and I gotta talk because God knows I don't play enough. It looks like there's some opportunity for some security operations. In particular, I see some VC left along the road here. They can't get out of the way. I grabbed that capital. I'm sticking in it. So I'm not going to do any major security operations trying to kill big stacks. That was not a good plan. It did some damage. It was about equal to both sides. You can see the U.S. replacements are getting to the point where they might actually lose units if they're not careful. But I'm not focusing on that, as I'm starting to reflect on the way the game works. I'm coming to the decision that with whatever commitment I've made with the U.S. so far, it's enough to keep Vietnam kind of clear under normal circumstances, but maybe what the VC, the NLF as a whole needs to do is to try to preserve force and do some sort of rolling offensives. The problem with rolling offensive, of course, is you end up spending, 10 of your commitment points each turn for it, but you keep the U.S. from getting morale ever from body bag. And you lower their morale. And you lower their morale in ways that they're not willing to do themselves by upping their commitment. I'm not sure I'm going to do it, but it's definitely a thought. And I also feel almost necessarily that I need to preserve my VC in the kind of environment that I have. I've been keeping their presence on the board, but those big NVA stacks, the U.S. just does not have the capability to bring force to bear against them that is sufficient to warrant, attacking them. A couple of the security operations. One down here they both kind of were mistakes. One down here which actually transferred a unit from 2nd Corps to 1st Corps, the headquarters of an ARVN unit, and that may end up not working out very well, but at least it got a capital cleared and unlikely to be easily taken by the opponents. It had some cost, but it was worse for the VC, I guess. I don't know. They have basically infinite points. The other one, I activated the 27th Marines and sent them in to clear this area. And they cleared the capital and then stumbled into something that was really too big for them. It was just a regiment, but they could not handle it, and it ran away, Why not? But now it's stacked here, and I just called off the security operation with the air power, 6 air points that I threw in on it. Took an air loss. My replacements are getting way too low. I mean, that's the point where I'm panicking, where I'm like, oh shit, I can't do anything with the U.S. because they're too low. And then the question becomes, hey, can I start killing units at this point? I know I've alluded to that a number of times. I've been keeping them higher than I usually do, though lower than I'm advised to do. But I think I cannot afford a U.S. security operation, which means I'm down to ARVN only. Now, ARVN's fine on security operations. There's no real penalty to using them for such, but yeah. I wanted to point out that heavy unit. So if I was sitting here just playing continuously, say opponent in an opposed play, I probably would have been aware that there was a heavy regiment sitting around there. The thing with this game is, if you were playing this opposed, you're probably not playing it 8 hours a day every day anyway. What you're probably doing is getting together once a week, once every couple weeks, and putting in 4 to 8 hours or whatever, and then maybe a week or two in between plays. So it's pretty easy that you have the same kind of failure to identify what the hell is going on as the U.S. You'd be very confused in a way that I don't feel like the ground commanders and that the game design that the ground commanders would be, and that the game design just slur everything together horribly, that the game design actually is intended to represent. It's one of the problems with hidden counter situations and stuff is like, yeah, it works great in a small game that you can just sit down and play face to face under certain particular considerations, but you start tweaking with the configuration of how you're actually playing it, and the meaning of hidden counters changes its flavor. And it's just, I don't have a good answer for it, you know. It's like, in a computer game or something, you might have a history log of what you fought in that area, and you might be able to piece back together, you know, say playing over Vassal or something, you might be able to piece back together the information you have. In this, unless you're taking notes or something between plays, you're going to have trouble remembering important stuff. New situations, and I can see my battery's not charging properly. Oh, I think my plugins aren't working right. This always goes bad with the cameras. But anyway, a VC attack here that included a regiment, which is a powerful unit able, you know, to do some serious damage, launched an attack here. And the results were zeros on both sides, with, you know, maybe a pursuit bonus or something. And the Arvin unit that was holding there is just like, I can't hold it, because those are likely results, and we'll just keep getting the attacks going higher and higher with no cost, you know, to the VC. So they fled. The pursuit was enough to chase them, engage again. They fled over to here. The pursuit was enough to chase them, hit even with that artillery support, and continue something where only one VC casualty was taken. Hey, that's a trade-off that's worth making, an attack for a VC casualty on the on their replacements. So I had to actually commit a first cav unit to stop that attack. And then it just, you know, that's it. Okay, good. Now, of course, there's some good units on the road here, which means the U.S. could do a security operation in the near future, but they got a lot on their plate right now and not a lot of replacements left. See the VC really beginning to do some serious damage here. So we pursued the Anzac unit into the 27th Marine, which was already operating before, pushed them back out of here. They can't stand and hold any longer. I could have thrown reinforcements in, maybe. I have like, you know, some Arvin units to try to stand, because the battle was not necessarily in the VC's favor, but the replacement numbers are getting so low that I can't stick around anymore. And it looks to me like we're going to start seeing some casualties on the U.S. side. We've already seen some Arvin casualties. I was trying to protect this artillery with a little brigade or whatever. No, battalion. And, sorry. And that got swamped. I think that was a different battle. Trying to see where that was. I think that was down in here where we took the capital. We didn't manage to actually get our troops into this capital. I was using my pursuit bonus on the Anzac to hit the units that had joined, and, well, I didn't get a pursuit bonus off of a kind of low roll, but that low roll is still doing me good numbers, and you can see the attacks is screaming up there. So this offensive may end up a little bit more impressive than it looked like on that first season. Basically, the first part of the season. The first part of the season was basically used to position a lot of the big forces into place where they can start landing some heavy blows. And those heavy blows are connecting. So I've conducted a number of mainly VC attacks, cutting across sort of the swath of all of Vietnam, running down as far as here in 4th Corps. And I'm at the point where I'm done, I think, with the VC attacks. At least they're loose ones. Yeah, that's well defended. I don't want to play with that. Basically picking on soft targets everywhere that I can find them. And beyond that, with what I'm seeing is kind of, and you can see my attacks is up to 41. At this point, every 3 attacks I make above 30 is worth a morale point off the U.S. So the more attacks I can make, the better it is. I certainly want to make as many as possible, but I also don't want to destroy the VC, unlike the real Tet. What I have left are NVA divisions, and maybe a few loose units that if they see an opportunity attack will take it. They're more likely to position themselves later for increasing the possibility of increasing the population under VC control, which is one of the real factors here at play. Notably, I haven't caused any U.S. casualties yet. The ARVN casualties that I've caused are painful, but I really had no other option. Wherever the U.S. can throw in, say, an artillery piece or something, like up here, they pretty much can stop the attack. It's no longer cost effective for the VC to continue making it. It does leave some exposed units that are probably going to get wiped up in some mop-up operations. But overall, I don't think I'm seeing as big a cost as I was seeing every turn with just non-offensive turns going on. We'll see if that changes a little bit, but the U.S. just does not have the kind of fighting power on the board that I feel like they can really throw themselves in and destroy something. And one of the things is, even if they hit a big stack, it's hard to keep that big stack, like an NVA division or something, from slipping away still. Not immediately, they don't get the alert movement, but they do get the capacity to start retreating. And, well, there are a few replacements on the NVA, but if they have some VC units stacked with them, they can take casualties on the VC and or on this moth. Which are kind of free as far as I'm concerned. I really don't want to lose points off my NVA units. There's still some soft spots down here. I may want to take advantage of those, but they're going to require a little bit more thought than the VC operations do, because if I put myself down there, I am definitely putting myself in the way of potential retaliatory actions, not necessarily security operations either. There are some big ARVN forces down there that could do some hurt on me. But as I've noted before, it's hard to take those NVA divisions down. However, there's a lot of air power left. I didn't waste it all on security operations this time. I'm holding off and seeing, hey, can I do some real damage a little later? So far, I haven't given the U.S. any opportunities to do anything other than reinforcement moves, though. What's going on with this game is I'm feeling sort of emotionally and psychologically challenged by it in ways that I don't know if war games usually hit me with, or any games. In particular, my tendency towards cautiousness and not taking losses and stuff like that makes me play in a certain fashion with both sides. And the offensive seems to be kind of loosening up those restrictions on the VC. Now, I know how to loosen up those restrictions to some extent with the U.S. Basically overwhelming firepower, etc., going in and only attacking where I know I'm not going to take losses. I know they can't sustain the losses. But the problem is, when I look at the NLF, in particular the VC units, and I'm like, I have like a 1 in 6 chance of causing a loss or something like that. I'm not going to attack, I'm not going to attack, and I'm not going to try to drain ARVN points because they seem less valuable. If I manage to kill ARVN units, it doesn't really matter that much, unless the trade-offs are really good. But now, with the offensive, because I'm getting a bonus for each attack I make, I'm willing to make attacks that don't do me any particular good, or are very unlikely to do me much good, rather than just try to preserve forces, which is what I like to do in most games. So, anyway, I thought I would put some thought to that. I've looked around at the units. The VC essential, or the NLF essentially has said, I'm not going to move my NVA divisions. I'm going to let the U.S. take its operation. And I'm looking around and I don't see anything the U.S. wants to do, while there's so many NLF-aligned units that have not done anything. So again, the psychology for me, has changed based on there's an offensive underway. The fact that these attacks count for something and are going to be important and have some value means that, you know what, if the NLF doesn't want to make attacks, I'm willing to take this as a pass. Probably next turn there is not going to be an offensive. Now, little do I know that I'm seriously considering that rolling offensives concept. What we're ending up with is a situation where both sides are kind of worn down by this offensive already. I moved the NVA units have a bit of trouble moving through bad terrain with artillery. As long as they don't have the artillery, they're okay. But anyway, I moved a bunch of the NVA units. I still have another stack here I haven't moved yet, and launched attacks. I'm out of replacements for them. I'm out for the U.S., and we actually have our first U.S. casualty showing up. That's going to be a morale cost, and I think that unit can't ever be brought back. I'm not sure. I have to look that up. It may be able to be brought in, but remember, I got that unit for free, and so that would be kind of a bonus unit to withdraw, because I can withdraw it for points, but now it's dead, and it's probably not worth bringing an armored unit back in at cost. Also, Arvin's taking some losses, but we're at the point where Arvin could actually go smack one of these NVA stacks. You're seeing a lot of capitals falling everywhere. One of the problems I have is I don't have the force to take on those big units, and I also don't have the replacement points to do it with the US, which means it's got to be up to Arvin, and Arvin doesn't exactly have pools of replacements either. So it feels like the war's just changing its tenor completely. You know, where before it was like this hunt and peck and trying to knock off the VC units. Now, with those NVA units on the board, they've changed the dynamic completely. I was afraid to bring them on because they looked like big targets to me. Well, now I'm not so sure they're so much big targets, but I'm kind of afraid that, like, I may just end up using firepower alone to try to knock strength counters off the board, because I just do not have the capacity for ground battles, at least if the Arvin is not involved in them. And even if they do get involved, say through Rangers or whatever, I don't have a lot of Arvin points left either. It's just, it's coming out very, very different flavor, that's all. I haven't felt like I've been able to play this sort of psych move that I play in a lot of other games, but it's just taking effect here. Essentially what happened is, shit, almost knocked my lamp over. I injured my leg, or my ankle, and I'm not really able to maneuver properly. I'm kind of hobbling. Anyway, there's a key stack left of of NLF forces, and our replacements are low. Yes, we had a cover VC unit there, but rather than try to optimize the VC here, instead what I did was I said, you know what, go ahead, US, you can take your move. The US is seeing that. They're seeing their own replacements being rather low, not feeling like they can particularly move forward. So they're not seeing a great opportunity available here. And then the NLF has decided, screw it, I'm going to let the turn end, because I don't think there's a whole hell of a lot more I can do. Granted, I'm at 46 attacks. 2 more attacks, I get another point of morale off them, but I'm only 1 point over, so you know, it's one every 3. It's every 3 that you get 1 for. So I'm going to call this the turn here. That's something that I haven't seen much of before in the game. I think maybe I tested it a couple of other times where there was an opportunity to kind of bluff your way to an end of a turn, but here I felt like it was appropriate to give a shot to. So this turn is ending. I'm going to do the economics going into the summer. And, well, it's not just economics, more political stuff and everything, and see what we come up with. But I'm not really worried about optimizing to make sure that I get all the potential VC modifications, to the population that I can possibly get. That doesn't feel like it's the goal anymore. It feels like the goal was to outplay, to outguess the U.S. as to when the turn was going to end. That's my control, and we've ended up in a mess. This offensive is going to impact things. There's no question of that. All these capitals that fell, everything else. And I'd rather just not keep pushing the limits here. I don't think it's necessary at this point for the VC. And maybe the U.S. has learned a lesson. Maybe they have to operate, as if the turn's going to end at any point. But that puts them on kind of a more clumsy footing than they've been for most of the game. They've been able to kind of predict what the VC are going to do. Well, now, with NVA units in the game, with a lot of other stuff going on, they're really getting caught off balance. Okay, so the overall population, kind of interesting. Where there wasn't any NLF activity, it still progresses and grows for the most part, a little bit. But wherever they were active, because the activity was so high this time, grabbing capitals and all kind of stuff like that, and I've got these guys pulled aside so I can count for the morale loss as well. Some of the ones, I have to count the ones on the board also for that. We actually lost 4 population this turn, which is a pretty big swing. I thought maybe it would be bigger because it looked like there was more going on, but maybe some lucky die rolls, some places, places like Tay Ninh up here that obviously a lot of modifiers in favor of the NLF, but there's no population there in favor of them. And then other places like down here in this area, some of the population wasn't. And Nguyen still is 0, for example, in terms of what's in favor of South Vietnamese. But some of these are able to grow without much interference taking place. Most of the interference is happening either here in the center area where we've been kind of strong, or now we're seeing some activity over down there in 4th Corps, but mainly near the border. So we'll try to figure out what that's all going to do, and I don't know where the hell we are in the interphase. The pacification, we got to make the decision on the bombing choices, which is kind of painful because technically I should be doing my calculations before or after the bombing, but I should know them before, and it's kind of painful to figure out the politics counts, where the attacks take place, where all those capitals take place, etc. I should know that information, so I kind of have to do the calculations multiple times, which is one of the pain in the ass of the game, is like you're doing calculations and then you have to redo them a little later, even though nothing's really changed, just because there's additional information that you don't know about in the nothing's really changed part. Like some other things do change, but you have an idea of what the baseline modification is going to be. But I think I'll just pick my bombing choices based on, my standard procedure there. Politics phase, figuring out the calculations for the morale losses. We're looking at a loss of 10, 15 morale off the U.S. I think I counted the dead unit in. I still haven't figured out what that dead unit means. I gotta look that up, whether he's bagged or otherwise. I'm almost certainly not bringing it back, but a total of -3 morale for the SVN, which is terrible. I mean, we're getting towards that 70, which is where this starts getting screwed, where the population incrementing starts getting screwed up. So since I never ramped up hard enough to really get that morale up higher, towards the good level, it's always been wavering, and my bombing of the north or whatever is part of what's keeping it alive. And I'm still kicking myself losing all that air power, and it just did not get used. Sure, it's still there for next turn. It means not a lot of air casualties, but all the same, a lot of my resources, the air mobile, the air power, obviously the navies, all the units I didn't move, all of that came into play in terms of like, because I was willing to let the NLF control the initiative for the operation entirely. And then over on the NLF side, we're looking at 31 additional morale coming into play. Again, that just keeps ramping up higher and higher. The more U.S. forces, the more the NLF has morale, the better and better it gets. Of course, I have to pay more though as I start eating up the population. So that's one factor in it. I'm going to do the recruitment a little later. And then I guess we'll load this up at that point. Even though it's kind of a short video, I kind of feel like Tet should be a standalone couple videos. So, as I'm trying to think of how to cope with, what additional forces to bring in as the U.S., what do I need? What can I do? One of the things I have to do is come up with the answer of what to do about an NVA division, which works out, and this is probably illegal, but to some 32 strength points for an unaugmented. I don't have any augmenteds on the board. 32 strength points. If I want to hit 32 strength points, even out in the clear, right, what do I need? Well, tremendous amounts of firepower will help, but I kind of also want to have enough combat to get like a +1 or +2 in case I have to follow them into the jungle or something like that, where, I just will not be able to cope with that in the really rough terrain. 32 strength points. That means I need to get an additional 16 to get a +1. That gets me to 48 strength points. What is going to be 48 strength points? Well, let's see what we've got with these big units. They're essentially 18. Free fire zone, bring it up to 22. I'm going to need 2/3 of a division plus additional firepower to get that +1. A +1. And if I go into this combat with some 28 strength points plus 6, 34, plus another 5, 39 strength points on the combat table, is what kind of firepower I'm going to be facing. 39. That's going to put me here. I'm going to be taking about equivalent losses. Really, if I, even with a +1, let's say 4, 3, 3, 2, 2, and then it gets better, but it gets worse on this side, right? I'm going to be trading casualties with the NVA at equal if I'm attacking with just that. Now, not exactly, because I'm counting my strength points there. They're going to be sitting on 3 7s is only 21, which means, what did I say? I was going to be 28 plus whatever. I was going to be in this column. Well, 21 puts them over here, and I add, say, what was I looking at? Something like, I don't remember what it was, 28. I'm trying to remember my numbers there. So if I have 28 strength points of ground units, I was looking at trying to get to, I can't remember my number anymore, 27 and 5 is 32. I wanted to get up to 48, I think it was. So that means I have to have 20 points of firepower in there to get up there. Well, okay, that 20 extra points of firepower puts me to 41. So yeah, that's about equal. That's about equal. I'll be trading it equal if I fight on that level. Now, obviously, if I'm using ARVN units, the cost is a little less, whatever. But it's just not something I really want to face. Yet those divisions can do some really ugly shit. And I haven't been able to knock them out. If I'm not able to knock them out, they're going to be able to slowly ramp up and just start moving throughout all of South Vietnam and taking capitals and degrading my position more and more. And we're going to see something where, there's actual provinces being lost to these. That doesn't seem like an acceptable solution. And I do not know how I can ramp up enough to actually cope with it. One reason I'm really afraid of doing, the next turns is after seeing the effects from Tet, or my limited Tet, I'm like, geez, I'm not seeing a destroyed NLF here. I'm seeing a more powerful one that's more threatening than I've seen ever before, and I just do not know how to handle it. Okay, the bookkeeping side has gotten really disgusting. Lots of crossouts on the plans, especially for the NBA. For the U.S., I ramped up my ARVN forces, bringing a lot of the units that I lost back in. You can actually bring everything back, even Rangers, except for Free World allies. And we have one lost Free World ally, not due to combat, but the Queen's Cobra Thai Regiment or Battalion or whatever is not there. But I'm not paying to bring in these Free World allies. They might be worth it if I ever have to bring in something small and don't have something small available, and I still have 1st Marine that hasn't brought in all of its units. I still have, I think, one more Marine regiment that can come in, and otherwise ramping up with divisions, etc. For the most part, the U.S. spent their points on ARVN supply, and then they're on replacement points. And you can see I got my replacements up, in fact, entirely for that. For the ARVN, it was mainly replacing units, although I did upgrade a bunch of those little battalions, get them a little bit more firepower, give them a little bit more staying power. If they can hurt small VC attacks that are made against them, then I don't have to worry about the VC basically trading 0-0 results for free attacks, which was really a problem I was seeing. Of course, part of that's because I wasn't throwing reinforcements in to replace them. I was instead running away, giving territories up, which was definitely problematic. There are no good choices. Obviously, I could have ramped up 25 instead of 15. I went with the 15-point ramp up again. To me, that seems extreme. When I look at, what I'm looking at here, I've got 471 morale, 219 commitment. This is a little over 3 years that I've managed that. I'm not going to be able to last the game if the ramp up is going to go that high. So that's one worry. Let me see. I'm assuming I started off with a 0 initial commitment. Yeah. So, obviously, I'm going to have to downgrade at some point. But the goal is to last until 75, right? So I can't push that ramp up too much. And I hate attrition. I hate taking attrition, especially when, it's not like, wow, I know I'll be able to keep doing this forever. I know I will not be able to keep doing this. I know that I'm paying prices that I can't afford. Over on the VC side, no offensive. I was not quite able to afford it and do other things I wanted, which included, I can build a couple of regiments here and then ship them down so that they can get back with their divisions wherever the hell they are. For actual VC units, I've got most of them built. There's three of the battalions that aren't on the board. Otherwise, I was able to replenish everything. And put some more heavier units on the board as well. For example, here I've got a division reformulating off board. I've got to track some of the numbers there. I'm still okay on population, but it's getting close to where I'm going to have to start paying even more for my population infiltration. So that's one concern with taking losses on the VC. One thing that was pointed out was that I probably am dispersing too much. And I know I'm real cautious. I'm like, geez, it's really unlikely I'm going to cause casualties here. And it looks like I'm going to get hunted down and take lots of losses. Let's just disperse. So most of those VC battalions, when they're hit by anything that, has any semblance of power against it, I look at the charts and I'm like, yeah, I can't fight. And that's why this number's way up there. And that's something I've been leveraging during the offensives in order, to use. And I may be doing more offensiveness than I have been, because now I've got the NVA divisions embedded in Vietnam, and that's as long as they're there, well, they ought to be doing things, although they don't necessarily want to do too much fighting except to capture important locations. So I don't think we'll see the kind of gung-ho attacks that I made before, especially now that the U.S. has its replacements up to a somewhat healthier number. That's still probably enough that I could drop it down. What else? I don't know. Still spending a lot on supplies. What I found was when I was spending less than this on supplies, less than getting 80 supplies essentially through because of the bombing up north, drops 9 times 10 down by 1 to 8 times 10. I was kind of running low, but I'm actually producing a surplus now that is of value. I mean, yes, I could eat up all those supplies, conceivably, build more VC units, but I would rather keep that surplus in play and see what's going on. You also see the NBA built up a bunch of replacement points as well, and that's one of the key factors here. I could not have deployed much with the losses that I took from the last turn. And now I've got a healthier number on NVA replacements as well. So even if the US can figure out something to do about those NVA units, they may have a little bit of staying power, assuming they don't have a VC stacked with them or near enough to them that they can take advantage of it. Right then, I got to check ARVN effectiveness, and that's about it. And then this goes up, right? And briefly, and it takes so long to cover some stuff, but not a great ARVN roll, a big 5 there. You can see the guys who are white, that's their corps that they're in. Granted, the Marines and paratroopers are working off the Chief of Staff, which I always feel like it should be the Air Force and Navy, except that would make life even harder to have them as separate things. The white indicates they're flipped over and not in command. And we had one of the problems, the 25th, which I moved up to First Corps, is now made ineffective, which is a problem because much of it's in Second Corps. We got basically some active units in Fourth Corps, though. Fourth Corps has improved significantly, and given that that's where the focus of the NVA activity is, it might work out okay. I don't know. I don't have a lot of ARVN replacements. Tried to buy what I could, but one of the problems with ARVN and VC is I have to do all this kind of balancing math in my head, and by the time I've done it and come back and I'm like, yeah, I could have probably squeezed, 3 less replacements for the US, and that would get me 6 more for the ARVN, but I just don't want to keep trying to balance and counterbalance and try to figure that all out. I guess we're ready to rip. That's the end of Tet and the setup for summer of '68. U.S. has all its air points back, and they'd like to get some revenge, but man, it's kind of scary now with those NVA units floating around everywhere. And of course, I also have the infiltration step, which I have not taken advantage of yet, which I should. These guys come down, get them on the road where they're good, and these guys have what? ×3 movement, so they have tons of movement. They can pretty much fly wherever they like. I just have to figure out where their divisions are and put them there, but otherwise this is going up.